The Old West, with its vast desert lands and endless horizons, hides secrets that defy understanding. Between the sand dunes and the silence of the mountains lie stories that never made it into books, legends and myths that survived the passage of time, passed down not through pages, but in whispers around the campfire, in the dark nights where the wind blows with a murmur that seems to carry echoes of the past. These mysteries cannot be erased, for they are intertwined with the very essence of the land and the people who once lived there. At the heart of the Old West, stories were passed down from generation to generation, but not in a conventional way. They were not found in books or newspapers, but in the accounts of those who lived the harsh life on the frontier. Every weathered face had something to say about the events that took place between the mountains and the desert. However, many of the details were deliberately erased because some legends were too dangerous to share. The government itself had a vested interest in keeping these stories buried, as what occurred in these lands often intertwined with the supernatural, defying logical explanations and the norms of society at that time. But the most intriguing part of it all is that, despite all the efforts to erase these stories, some legends never vanished. They withstood the test of time, told in the dim light around the campfires by those willing to listen. Those who knew the Old West up close in its wildest forms understand that some stories were more than mere fictions. They were warnings. They were not made just to entertain, but to remind us that the unknown, the shadow that haunts history, can never be completely eradicated. The legend of the rider without tracks is one of the most fascinating and unsettling in the Old West. According to reports, a mysterious man appeared in various towns across the American West, always mounted on a black horse and dressed in dark clothing. The strangest part was that wherever he went, he left no tracks in the dry, dusty desert soil. His traces simply disappeared into the air, as if he were a shadow, a specter. He always arrived in times of great tension, like before violent confrontations or tragedies that marked the local communities. In the few encounters that occurred, the rider without tracks never spoke a word. He would simply appear near a significant event, always surrounded by an atmosphere of tension and fear. Some said he was a harbinger, a messenger of something dark that was about to unfold. Others claimed he was a vengeful spirit, a lost soul still wandering the barren lands of the West in search of something, or perhaps seeking redemption. However, the scariest stories speak of his connection to a dark pact, where he allegedly traded his soul for an unusual power, the ability to travel without leaving a trace. Some reports claim that the rider without tracks was last seen in a small town in the Arizona desert just before a tragedy occurred. However, after the event, he simply vanished, as if he had never existed. No footprints were found, no clues left behind, and people began to wonder, did he really exist, or was it all just a myth, a creation to explain the unexplainable? Those who believed in his existence and saw his arrival as a sign that something terrible was about to happen never lived the same way again, haunted by the vision of a rider who appeared out of nowhere, leaving no trace. One of the most intriguing and chilling legends of the Old West is that of the sunken town of Sonora. The story begins with the prosperous town of Sonora, located along a tributary of the Colorado River. It was a thriving community full of life, commerce, and families. But on a fateful night, a massive earthquake struck the region, and an unprecedented terror gripped the town. By morning, the entire town had vanished beneath the waters. The river somehow had risen and swallowed Sonora in a matter of hours. To this day, locals swear they can hear bells and voices coming from the depths of the water. After the tragedy, the town of Sonora was thought to be lost, but the reports didn't end there. Some say that on the quietest nights, when the wind blows gently over the river, one can hear the echoes of an ancient symphony, as if the souls of the town were trapped beneath the waters, unable to rest. There are those who claim that on certain full moon nights, a ghostly silhouette of a man wearing a cowboy hat can be seen at the river's edge, gazing into the dark waters. The superstitious believe the man is the last resident of Sonora, condemned to guard the secret of the lost town. For years, adventurers and treasure hunters have ventured on expeditions to try to discover what remains of Sonora, but most returned with nothing, some even swearing they saw strange shapes in the depths of the river or felt inexplicable presences. The most mysterious part of all is that after decades of searching, historical records of the town of Sonora seem to have disappeared. There are no clear records of its founding or even its fall. All that remains are the reports and rumors that have been passed down through generations. The sunken town of Sonora remains an enigma, a legend buried beneath the waters, waiting for someone bold enough to uncover its secret. Among the legends that surround the Old West, the story of the sheriff who never died is one of the most mysterious and intriguing. The legend says that an old sheriff, a man of unyielding justice, was fatally wounded in a shootout during a confrontation with a gang of outlaws. What no one knew, however, was that he did not die. Somehow he survived what seemed to be a certain death. In the years that followed, the sheriff continued to appear in the desert towns as if he were a shadow, always vigilant, always lurking. No matter how much he was wounded or threatened, he never died. Wherever he went, evil retreated, and the towns calmed, but the sheriff was never seen again. He would disappear for weeks until a new threat arose, and he would return like a specter of justice. The legend says that the sheriff who never died was more than just a man. He was a manifestation of justice itself. People began to believe that he was not an ordinary man, but an entity, something created by desperation and the need for order. In the chaos of the West, in times of great despair, he would appear to resolve disputes and ensure that peace was restored, but always at the cost of his own life. He never remained alive, but his presence was always a symbol that justice could prevail, even in the most extreme conditions. However, the truth behind his legend remains a mystery. Some versions of the story claim that the sheriff was not immortal, but rather had made a pact with the desert spirit, an ancient guardian of justice, who kept him alive until his mission was complete. Others believe that the sheriff was the spirit itself, a soul wandering the deserts and abandoned towns, condemned to never find peace until evil was eradicated from the West. The fact is that, while he was present, the villains knew that in the end they would be defeated, but the sheriff never stayed to see the end of his own story. He was merely a ghost, always lurking,